Good morning, everybody. Happy to introduce you the new panel. And first of all, we have Karen Marin, that is... Karen Dubin, sorry. I'm really grateful to Karen that organized this panel. And obviously that is the magic question mark. Obviously we are in Esxence, we are speaking about the brands in the artistic perfumery, and the great question is how to create a brand and how to let the brand to survive and to be a reference point. I think that everybody knows what is the must-to-have brands in an artistic perfumery shop. It's a mix of creativity, it's a mix of heritage, it's a mix of capability to create a trend for the future, but obviously it would be better to listen to the authors, to the people involved in brands, and trying to explain us how you did it, or how the brand did it, and how you want to continue to be a reference point for everyone else. Here we have the spotlight, so the pretenders, and at this table we have someone else that is no more a pretender, I think.
Oh, okay. Oh, actually, this one works. Okay, well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the panel. Thank you, Silvio, for introducing us. Just to tell you who I am, as Silvio said, my name is Karen Marin. I'm the Business Development Manager for Parfums Givenchy, which, yes, is a big brand. However, if you see my history behind me, you'll see that I have quite a background in retail, as well as having worked 8 years at Sephora US as a fragrance buyer at the time when it was entrepreneurial and when we built brands. Many brands of which are in Esxence today that I worked with, and one on this panel particularly with whom I worked to help build their brand. So hence my presence. I think that if you have walked the show, you see how relevant this question is, how to build a brand, how to stay relevant. We're in a field of a proliferation of brands, where in the past 20 years, maybe there were 100 brands. Now there's at least 1,000 offers on the market. So how do you survive? And we're going to talk about that today. With me on the stage, you have an international panel of brand representatives, leaders in the field who are successful. And we'll review a series of questions, and then we'll open it up to you if you have additional questions you'd like to ask anyone on the panel. So to present the panel first, starting with, to my left, Amy Nelson-Bennet from Clive Christian. Then we have Stefania Giannino on the far right with Nobile 1942. Next, I have Bailey Leeds on the far left with Robert Piguet. And next to me is Luc Gabriel with The Different Company. So our first question, in a sea of competitors, what makes a brand strong? What is it about yours that makes it stand out? I've talked to everyone here on the panel, and I think, Bailey, I wanted to start with you on this one because you it's a heritage brand. We talked about the history of Robert Piguet and how it sets you apart. Can you share a little bit with the audience?
Is this working? Yes, it is. Thank you, Karen. I think we're in a particularly fortunate position at Robert Piguet to have this legacy, to have this heritage, and I think that's what really does set us apart in so many ways. And what we consider our charge, which is often a great challenge, is to make sure that we remain relevant, but we always nod to our heritage and always acknowledge where we came from. I think continuing to be modern, but also, you know, always acknowledging our founder, Robert Piguet, who he was. His vision is really, it's much more of a challenge than one would think, because you really always want to think the way he did, which was revolutionary at the time. I mean, he really was the true founder of niche fragrance. He really created things that were completely unusual and unheard of. Who would put leather in a fragrance? Leather notes and Bondi were absolutely extraordinary at the time. So we have to continue to try and do that. We have to continue to be innovative. We have to think and walk in his footsteps. We like to think that somewhere he's looking down on all of us and our team, very happy with what we're doing. So we're lucky if we feel like we're acknowledging his genius.
And Amy, when we spoke, there was a quote that I took from our interview that I absolutely love. It's when you said that the brand is unapologetically opulent. So with Clive Christian, can you share your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I'm fairly new to Clive Christian. I only joined the business last September, and that was my first impression of the brand. And it is very, very opulent and quite a flamboyant brand in both its appearance and the complexity and the strength of the fragrances that we produce. And it's not for everybody. And that's, to me, what I liked, is it's for a very small, very particular customer with very clear tastes. And to stand out in a market that's getting really, really crowded, you only have to walk around here to see how many people are producing interesting products and trying to be successful in this market. You have to have the courage to say, I'm not for everybody. And you have to pursue that point of difference with real conviction and courage and not get pulled into easy opportunities. I could sell that, I could make that, that person's clever, let's try that. You have to stay very true to what you are and have courage that that position is strong enough to stand the test of time. And hopefully, being unapologetically opulent, owning that position and building on that is what will continue to make Clive successful.
Thank you. Stefania, when we spoke, you talked about the history of your brand, the Italian heritage. If you could share some of that, please.
Can I speak Italian?
I think so,
okay.
yes.
No, it's better because maybe... No.
It will be translated, yes.
Grazie. No, preferisco parlare italiano anche perché comunque sempre con il proprio linguaggio si riesce ad esprimere meglio i propri sentimenti, perché comunque la nostra è una storia legata alla famiglia, quindi alle passioni, alle emozioni. E quindi sì, effettivamente il brand è tutto costruito intorno alla famiglia nobile, quando è nata nel 1942 l'idea di entrare in questo ambito, ed è stata sviluppata da il nonno, il padre, i figli, fino ad oggi sostanzialmente. Quindi effettivamente insomma il concetto che noi vogliamo far passare è quello dell'azienda familiare, dell'azienda artigianale. Quindi sono concorde con quanto espresso da Clive Christian, perché effettivamente questo un po' fa parte del nostro modo di vedere le cose, cioè di fare le cose quasi fatte a mano, cioè artigianali, utilizzando chiaramente quello che è anche il nostro patrimonio italiano, no? Dell'artigianato italiano, eccetera, e di diffondere questa idea. Quindi come anche la storia ci ha dimostrato, no? Che i prodotti artigianali non sono magari mai uno uguale a un altro, non sono prodotti omologati e industrializzati, e quindi è un po' il concetto che noi vogliamo trasmettere. E questo fa la differenza sostanzialmente, perché comunque c'è uno studio, una ricerca per far cose quasi profumi unici, diversi, non copiati, non simili ad altri. Questo richiede grandissima attenzione, perché chiaramente sarebbe facilissimo riuscire magari ad avere come prototipo un profumo di successo, un qualcosa che già comunque ha detto qualcosa sul mercato, e fare una cosa analoga, no? Cerchiamo di distinguerci in questo e cerchiamo anche di proporre cose nuove, facendo anche un po' degli azzardi forse, no? Però è giusto che sia così, perché questo è il nostro ambito, noi vogliamo essere autentici e arrivare nel cuore dei nostri clienti.
Thank you. I heard the words authentic and genuine. Luc, let's call on you as a French brand. You're the only French brand, and Piguet is Swiss. So I know we talked about it being haute parfumerie, but contemporary and different.
It's exactly that. Thank you, Karen. The different company is a French-based brand. We're all French. Started in 2000. If you remember, for those who were here in that market, 2020 fragrances launched that year. Not brands, fragrances. And we launched 3 out of these 20. So we're pioneering that field, and we relate to the tradition of haute parfumerie in France, and we decided to create the contemporary, as you said, vision of the haute parfumerie of the 21st century, with a point of difference on any of the fragrance we make, and on the style and design that has been created by Thierry de Bechmakov specifically for the brand. Now, lots of things, it's interesting because lots of things you hear today, and I guess we'll get back to that, have been sort of, not only by us, but by a few brands launched at the time, engraved or written down as mantras, so to speak. So you will hear lots of things about carte blanche on the perfumer, best ingredients, etc., etc. That's kind of true for other brands coming back to these days, kind of more and more difficult, even for us today, to really develop and be focused on that point.
Okay.
It's good with the brand, because I think they want to hear about something else than just us.
Let's go to our next question then, and I'm going to start with you, because you had a good point. It was the question, how do you create a clear identity and then communicate it to the end consumer? So who are you, and how do you represent that in your product, in your communication, in your visuals?
Yeah, it's a very good question. So we discussed that.
Yeah.
As I said, contemporary. So of course, the first thing you see is the product, but before anything, the product is the fragrance. At the end of the day, this is what we're selling. Fragrances, and specifically emotions that are related to this fragrance. And around that, the only thing we can try to achieve is to be completely coherent in the way we develop the design of the products, the specific aspects like the refillability, because since the beginning we're an eco-conscious brand, even before ecology was sort of in fashion. And bringing that out, from inside to the outside is certainly one of the most difficult things. So the way we try to achieve that is to be sort of always true to the DNA of the brand. We've made mistakes. I've made mistakes. So we try to correct it along the way. But, this coherence is exactly what we're looking for.
Oh. Okay. Yeah, I remember, because what you said to me was that the first communication did start with the product and getting the message, what you think it is, into the product and communicating it from the way that it's viewed by the consumer. And then Amy, when we spoke, what I really liked about what you told me was how making that, communicating to the consumer, when you're in a store, you have 30 seconds. So how do you make that happen?
Yeah, I mean, I'm managing a brand now, but my background is actually true retail. So I'm a shopkeeper by trade, really, and come from that sort of brand and marketing side. So I tend to be the person always thinking, what are the people that are standing on counter representing my brand? How do they get the attention and grab the interest of people? And it's not spraying them with perfume when they walk past them, which is the great trick in most beauty halls that gets me straight out of a store. And I was explaining to Karen that you have to presume, start with people with the lowest attention span. At most, you've got 10 to 30 seconds. What is the simplest, clearest, strongest message you can give that individual, and how good can you be at identifying what that person is there to look for? Are they interested in your brand and your heritage? Are they replenishing? Are they buying a product they've always bought and loved? Make that easy, get there. And we train people to be able to find out what a consumer wants and tell them that in under 30 seconds. Now, they could talk to a customer for 3 hours, and we've got customers who want that kind of service. But they have to be able to start with what are the simplest, most compelling messages you have, and you have to train them out globally. If you want to grow, you have to be quite focused on the key things that you can say about your brand and your products that are different. And it isn't, you've got the best ingredients. There's hundreds of brands with wonderful ingredients. Hundreds of brands with great heritage. You've got to say something quite unique, quite attention-grabbing, very quickly, very concisely. And you've got to train your people all over the world, regardless of what job they do, to do that. And if you can't do the 30-second sale, you're probably going to struggle to be competitive, given how many brands are trying to tell that story that quickly.
Yeah, I remember you telling me the idea of having a fascinating fact or a story to tell that really brings the consumer in. And at that point, then you've got their attention span, as you said, that then you can talk to them for a longer period of time, and it's so important.
Yeah, I always say we're human, and not every quality about us is the most attractive, but we all want that little story that we can tell at dinner to our friends that night. And if someone says, you smell great, you don't want to just say thank you. You want to go, you wouldn't believe it. This product has what, you want to be able to tell that bite-sized story to your friends in the same way you do with wine and food and a lot of other things. Fragrance, in my way of thinking, is a lot about connoisseurship and the interesting quality and substance of the products. And consumers want to, they're interested in that, and they want to pretend to their friends that they have that level of connoisseurship with fragrance, that they're wearing a sophisticated product that says something about them. And if you can't give that story to them, they can't retain it because they haven't worked in the industry their whole life. It's not as easy for them. What's second nature to us is often the first time they've discovered something interesting in the making of fragrance or the way the ingredients work, the way a fragrance transposes itself over time. That is usually new to the end consumer and very common knowledge to us. But they're fascinated by that, and they can tell other people those stories. That's what makes you strong, is the ability to give your consumer the knowledge to tell that story to their friends at dinner that night.
Thank you. We're going to go on to the next question, which is a loaded question. How do you balance originality, creativity, and artistic expression with commercial demand and financial constraints? Luc, I think I'll start with you because this was your favorite question.
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. And at the same time, that's the key to our business. Is that whenever you launch a fragrance, you never ever know. When we started the different company, we had with Gérald Ghislain 3 different fragrances. The first is Menthus, never heard of before. A very different way of looking at a rose and a completely specific iris. Nobody had in mind what would happen in the market with these fragrances. Now, today, there's absolutely no way that at the end of the stage, of course not at the beginning of the creation process, you always had in mind not the commerciality or will it sell, but does it fit with the DNA of the brand for us, which is the elegance, and are we sure that potentially it could work? Because there's no way on earth that I guess anybody on this panel will launch somebody and shoot themselves in their foot and say, oh, it's not going to work, but great, I do it. All right? And basically this balance is one of the most difficult to have.
Yeah.
So whenever I create a fragrance with a perfumer, the first thing I need is to have that sort of inside balance on the fragrance. You feel comfortable with it, and you feel that's the right timing. It's purely guts. You know, there's no data, no specific thinking behind it, that it works or it doesn't. But, you know, the bestseller we have, or the two bestsellers we have, I never thought when I launched it that it would be the bestseller for the brand.
So interesting, and I know you told me that sometimes in the creative process you decide that you still love the fragrance, but maybe it's not the right time to launch it on the market because the market's not ready.
Yeah, that's absolutely right.
Yeah.
And we've seen over the last couple of years different trends on the market, but trends that sort of come from an unconscious combination of things. You know, there's been this trend on the leather a few years back. And today, if you listen to everybody, all the trend should be iris. I had things like that, you know. And I'm not even mentioning the oud. It's not even a trend. It's like, I don't know what it is exactly now. But yes, at some point, if you feel that it's not, as I said, the balance, it's not the right timing, you just don't do it.
Right.
And I have a few fragrances that I've not launched yet because I don't feel completely comfortable with it.
I think that's a very interesting point, that you're holding it until it's the right moment. Bailey, I know when we talked about this, you talked about trying to figure out what needs to be added to the portfolio, and again respecting the brand heritage, and what would Robert Piguet do? What would he think would be the right direction to go?
I mean, I think to Luc's point, you have to some extent really acknowledge what's happening in the industry and what's happening in terms of trends. I think when we develop fragrances, it's you know, it's sort of we look to what really affects us on a visceral level. We want to have a kind of connection with our customer. We know that we have certain things in our DNA that we have to respect, but we also know that the way we are going to present a fragrance has got to be relevant, as I mentioned before. And then, of course, as you say, with the the financial constraints and whatnot, you have to make sure that what you're doing is going to be true to the brand, that it's not going to be something that wouldn't make sense. But you also have to do something that is going to be supportive and nurture the brand. So, not helping very much, but I think the point is it's a very delicate balance, and we're lucky if we get something that people react to, but that doesn't always happen. So we learn as we go along.
Stefania, I know when we talked to you, we also talked about looking at the portfolio, staying authentic, thinking of what would be in line with what the existing fragrances are, but bringing something different, and even looking to some of your clients and what they've asked for.
Sì, perché sicuramente uno degli aspetti che è fondamentale è quello di ogni giorno essere a contatto con le persone, con i nostri clienti. E questo ci dà veramente tanta forza, tanta voglia di fare, la passione sostanzialmente. Tante cose sono venute fuori proprio da questo rapporto, no? Idee, concetti su cui lavorare. Ed è questo il bello di questo ambito della profumeria, cioè il fatto che esiste la possibilità di avere proprio un contatto quasi diretto, no? Con il nostro cliente finale, sia il consumatore che la profumeria che poi diciamo vende i nostri prodotti. Tendenzialmente Nobile cerca di non seguire il trend del momento, cioè la fragranza che in quel momento va di più. Cerchiamo di evitare proprio questo percorso perché non ci interessa, no? Il nostro modo di vedere le cose è quello di esprimere, no? Il nostro modo di, diciamo, quello che abbiamo dentro, quello che vogliamo raccontare, le storie che vogliamo raccontare. Però effettivamente questo legame azienda, produttore e consumatore è unico nel nostro settore, no? È veramente unico e questo ci dà la forza di fare delle cose anche belle, interessanti, rispondere. Un piccolo accenno ad esempio ad un profumo che abbiamo fatto recentemente è venuto proprio fuori dalla discussione in un ambito di una fiera con una cliente che aveva appena letto un libro, no? Molto interessante, mi ha raccontato la storia e questo mi ha veramente intrigato tantissimo e da lì è nato un profumo fondamentalmente, quindi cioè, possono essere tante le ispirazioni ed è molto artistico questo, è bellissimo.
Thank you. Amy, do you want to add anything on your point of view for Clive Christian and balance?
Well, we're pretty lucky when it comes to cost because we operate on the belief, which I'm still getting used to because it's a bit different from previous lives, but we create a product that we think is going to be amazing, whether that's the ingredients, the packaging, how we want to launch it. And then our view is we figure out what we need to do to make that product available to our customer target, but still be able to make money. And we price it at that price, and that's always an extremely high number. And our belief is that if our product is good enough, and also has a permanence. We're a bit like you. We don't design for trends, which is why we have never discontinued a fragrance. All our products sell to a level because they're not getting the upside of a trend, but they never fall off either. They're good, steady products in terms of their sales pattern. But we just kind of go courageous and go, this product is good enough. This is the price we need to put against it to make it. And if we're right, that we'll find a customer for it. And to date, that has worked for the brand since it was founded. And we will continue to make our products with that in mind. What we have to do is be right enough of the time that product is good enough to demand that price point and to find its consumer.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to the next question, which is, how do you determine investment choices? And when I was interviewing everyone, I saw that there were two very distinct themes, and one was very financial and driven about where are you going and how do you get there, and the other was more about it being all about the product and how to make the product and the brand even better. Luc, let me start with you on this one, because your school of thought was really it was the product first, and how do we improve it and keep it at the level we want it to be and better.
Yeah, absolutely. Investment choices, you have to make choices because you don't have like deep pockets with zillions in it. So the first thing you want to do is always improve the product. Not only improve the product, but also continue creating and enhance it. Fragrances, when we launched the fragrances 6 or 7 years ago, it didn't cost a lot of money. Launching a fragrance today costs a lot more money. And as I said, before launching one, we work on quite a few. So it's a very long, difficult, and costly process. So I'm on the side, you mentioned two different sides. I'm on the side of the product first kind of investment decisions. Now, of course, once you've invested in product, you need to invest more and more in how to showcase it. So everything that's related to merchandising and retail is more and more important today than it was back in the day. So these are the two, first sets of investments we always make.
Okay. Stefania, if you wouldn't mind to comment as well, because I know that your frame of thought was very similar for your brand.
In effetti siamo molto allineati da questo punto di vista. Concordo con Luc, le nostre scelte di investimento sono dettate dal miglioramento del prodotto, cerchiamo di fare il possibile per essere sempre in grado di soddisfare i nostri clienti, fondamentalmente questo è il nostro obiettivo. Quindi sicuramente, come diceva lui, gli investimenti sono importanti, ogni volta che viene fuori un prodotto è molto importante riuscire a star dietro a tutto, anche il rapporto con i nostri clienti finali, i nostri profumieri, eccetera. Però è questa la nostra priorità fondamentalmente, migliorarci, fare sempre qualcosa di più, qualcosa che soddisfi le aspettative dei nostri clienti.
Thank you. Amy, when we talked, it was a very targeted decision for you.
I have always worked in very creative businesses, so I tend to be quite structured about how we make decision choices, because I've got teams of people who think everything they do is a fabulous idea. We should be investing tons of money in everything. And we're a small business. We can't do everything well, so you have to have a disciplined process. I'm very clear about what are your business's goals? Where do you want your business to be in 5 years? And is what we're investing in driving us towards that goal? Those goals can be very, very different depending on what your business scenario is. So where are you trying to get to? Does this investment push you in that direction? And when you have multiple choices of how you can be investing beyond making fabulous product is obviously the cornerstone of what we all do. But when you're talking about showcasing the product, as Luc was saying, there's so many options available to you now. And you really have to think carefully about what is going to give me the biggest win, which is essentially the question of what are my customers going to like most? How much does it cost me to deliver that? And how high maintenance is that for my people? So I put a lot of value on the human resource and complexity to implement certain investments, because that does tend to get overlooked. A lot of times people think digital, for example, is free. It's not free. There are certain things you can do that cost less than traditional media, but they tend to be very labor intensive to do well. And I think with the way you showcase your products and your brand changing, you have to be cognizant of not just the operating spend to do it and what you're going to get for it, but how long does it take? How complex is it for your people to deliver and deliver well?
Yeah.
And really think carefully about that the cost of your resource and what your people aren't doing if they're doing that.
Yeah, that's a very important point. And just to include you, Bailey, I know when we talked about this, it was very similar conversation and I think I took your words of where am I going and how do I get there and what's my best path, and as well as what's going to give me the most impact. Yeah.
Yeah, just to Amy's point, you have to think on a global level, not just in terms of the geography, but a global level in terms of what your brand means. And I think you really have to think about, put yourself in a future situation and think about, well, is that going to make sense for my brand? Is that going to take me where I want to be? That's basically it. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. We're going to move on to our next question, which is, what is your strategy for retail and e-commerce? There are a lot of opportunities out there, but it's something where you want to limit your distribution based on what is right for you. And Bailey, I can start with you on this one because we did talk about this, that Piguet is particular and it's not right to be everywhere.
It's so true. We shouldn't be everywhere. We can't be everywhere. It's not part of our identity to be everywhere. We have a lot of very complimentary requests to include Piguet in certain retail situations that, when you look at it, that just, I many times wake up in the middle of the night thinking, oh gosh, wouldn't it be great? We'd make so much money if we were there. And then I think, oh good God, that would be so horrible for us to be there. So it's really not about, it's really not about the money. It's really about, again, just from my opening comments, being true to your DNA and making sure that, if Robert Piguet was sitting across from me right now, he'd be feeling pretty good that we're not, forgive me, in Sephora, that we're not...
Not anymore.
Sorry about that. That we're not in places that aren't true to the brand. Being repetitive,
right.
But you get my point.
Amy, when we spoke, one of the comments that you made that I really, it struck me, was how you really looked at the impact that any decision of going into retail or new distribution would have. And to quote you, no door is zero maintenance.
In my previous life, I inherited a brand and a business that had been over-distributed. And that took me years to fix, and it was painful. And I got told, to take a brand and fix it when it has cracks is very, very heavy lifting. And a lot of that brand's problem was extreme over-distribution because they got the calls, people got excited, and they said yes. And it started slowly, and it was sort of a near death by 1,000 cracks. But pulling that back was painful. And we had so many people that said, but it's a low-maintenance account. It doesn't take any effort, which meant that actually you get yourself in a position as a brand where you have hundreds of points of distribution. You have gorgeous product collecting dust because you can't support that retail partner that you've placed your product in, or it's not an appropriate distribution point. There isn't enough of your target customer there, or whatever the case may be. Or your core customer goes in and goes, I've been shopping all day, I've seen you in 7 places. I want to break up. I don't love you anymore. You're not special. Everybody can have you. And I think that psychology of it's a short opportunity, it feels like it's a good decision commercially, can completely transform your commercial model in a not good way if you don't think about that from a 2 to 3 year perspective. Because you just degrade your brand, and you will have to change what you charge for your products to survive in a mass distribution model. You just will.
Do you want to add something? Yeah.
And that, to add to the point, Amy, when we started working with Robert Piguet, not only was the Fricas formulation completely diluted, but the distribution was completely diluted. So one of the great things that really, really became paramount in terms of bringing Robert Piguet back to its glory was completely reducing the distribution of specifically, our classics, but also returning our classics to their original formulations. So, again, totally agreeing with Amy, making sure that you are treating the brand the way it needs to be treated and trying to fix so many of the things that had sort of gone wrong in the history over the time with Robert Piguet. So it's a great challenge to fix this leaky bucket retailing situation when you become that.
Stefania, I know when we talked about your partnerships with retail and with your distributors. So,
in effetti, diciamo che il nostro marchio si caratterizza proprio per, come dicevo giustamente prima, per il rapporto proprio personale, no? E così con i nostri clienti profumieri e con i nostri distributori nel corso degli anni abbiamo diciamo comunque costruito questa relazione. E questo trasferimento delle informazioni attraverso il racconto delle nostre storie, attraverso i nostri profumi, rende facile anche il passaggio, diciamo, di questo messaggio al consumatore finale. Ciascuno dei nostri profumi racconta qualcosa e il nostro distributore ha la possibilità di raccontarlo al proprio cliente, il quale lo racconta al cliente finale. E quindi è un passaggio praticamente di emozioni sostanzialmente. È chiaro che diciamo, non c'è nell'ambito del nostro messaggio non c'è nulla di veramente strutturato, nel senso che noi siamo una piccola azienda e non abbiamo, diciamo, delle strategie sul retailer di shop in shop, eccetera. Quindi è la storia, diciamo, che noi raccontiamo che è il nostro marchio di per sé che diciamo viene trasmesso al cliente finale. È un po', diciamo, un modo molto forse semplice, però a mio avviso il messaggio molto semplice che noi diamo arriva effettivamente al cliente.
Thank you. Just to catch on to the second half of the question about e-commerce, Luc, I thought I would start with you because what you told me was you had mixed feelings about e-commerce. And I agree that, as we said, you have to smell the fragrance at some point.
Yeah, just one step back on the retail. We have to bear in mind that the retail industry, well, the organization of retail for all brands is constantly changing. I mean, most of the concept in stores that exist today did not exist 5, 6 years, 7 years ago. And we do not know what's going to happen in China. And if I tell you India, you're going to look at me and say, India what? There's nothing in India. Well, see you 5 years down the line and things will completely change. So I think we need to have a set of parameters straight with the brand. And the only thing I'm looking for, I'm completely agnostic, is do our clients go to that specific place? Do we have the right level of service presenting and explaining the brand in that place? And can we provide, as you mentioned, can we provide the right level of support to that specific door? And it sets, with these parameters, it sets you exactly how many, in how many doors you could be and in how many doors you want to be in a given country, because it's a country-by-country type of approach. Now, back to the e-commerce, it's a love-hate relationship. We would love to have e-commerce and sites that would be just as gorgeous and with the right set of parameters, as just explained, as brick-and-mortar stores. But it's not exactly that way. At the same time, there's no way we cannot be on that type of network. And I think more and more we will have e-commerce or sites, or however you name it, taking a larger chunk of the business on that market. Now, the hate part is all the parallel and gray markets we see happening in that field. And it's frankly a nightmare. And just to share an example with you, we just launched a complete, what I say just is out there in Esxence, a complete new repackaging. And I heard from one of my distributors today that they saw it already 15 days after we just launched it on a grey market somewhere. So we have invested heavily since the beginning of the year on specific unitary QR codes on each product. And then we're able to track it down. And I'm going to make a huge buzz about who has done it. Because I think that at some point in time, maybe a little less for Clive Christian, considering the price point and stuff, but Piguet were in the same boat. and that's kind of a nightmare. And so it's very difficult for us as brands to keep the level of quality we want to achieve in the retail.
Yeah.
And we want to achieve on the different sites and e-commerce, and we're so strict with them. Like, you can't use that picture, and you can't discount anything, and you can do this and do that. And all of a sudden you see in lots of European, Eastern, South American, US countries, whatever, your product discounted at 70%. And you're like, what? So, you know, the love-hate relationship is always there. And I guess we mentioned the investment part. I see how much I've invested last year in legal fees. 10 times more than 10 years ago, period. Just for everything that's related with the brand names and with it related with the lawsuits. And it is getting more and more difficult.
Yeah. I know Amy and Bailey, when I spoke to both of you about e-commerce, one of your concerns was that the process of going onto an e-commerce site, it should be transparent as if you have that experience that you would have in the store. So it has to be seamless. The process of navigating the site from finding the product to the checkout has to be luxury. So is there anything you'd like to add on your viewpoint?
Yeah, I'm quite opinionated on the subject of e-commerce, as Karen found out in our call. The luxury industry as a whole, not just the fragrance industry, is behind the general trend, with the exception of very high-end travel and hospitality industry, which has led a lot of commercial activity on the internet. And I was explaining to Karen that in my experience, one of the reasons, apart from the fact that we think you have to try on the shoes before you buy them, which I can definitely tell you on a weekly basis is no longer the case. If you translate that into fragrance, people will experiment. If you make that process simple for them, it means you have to allow returns. But I think the luxury industry has gotten very carried away with our gorgeous imagery and all these sort of moving images online and creating something pretty that's very, very hard to use. And if you think about a very luxury consumer, what do they not have enough of? Time. They want to get things done very quickly, very efficiently. And I think in the luxury industry, we've gotten caught up with the shop window, per se, and have forgotten that at the end of the day, it's really about, I want to find what I love very quickly, I want to buy it really easily, I want you to ship it to wherever I want, preferably yesterday. And I think that convenience element, if you can create a fantastic shopping experience, that helps you offset the downside of e-commerce, which is you can't smell the product, you can't feel it, you can't touch it. But you can provide something for your customer when they're in a certain mood. But a lot of that is about convenience, and I think sometimes in luxury we find that a bit boring to work on that part of the customer process.
I know you're going to ask the social media question next, which I think it relates to all the things we're talking about in terms of e-commerce.
Just go right into it.
Sorry.
We're already talking about it, so it's fine.
Yeah,
it's a good segue.
I mean, e-commerce has so much to do with social media now, because you look at what's happening in terms of a Kardashian putting something on Instagram, and all of a sudden they've made X millions of dollars. The fact that Kendall Jenner has 74 million followers, and if she posts something, Estee Lauder makes X millions of dollars. It's like buying 30 seconds on the Super Bowl. I mean, it's just phenomenal. So at the same time, the thing is, it's all connected, because social media you can't ignore. It's a force of nature. It affects e-commerce, because e-commerce is also evolving, much like Luc said. Retailers, everything is different. E-commerce is evolving, not necessarily because the customer is changing. Yes, they're getting younger. The millennials are knowing how to do something on their phones. They're buying stuff on their mobile desktops. It's evolving every moment of every day, and we have to move efficiently and in a stealth manner to keep up with it. So yes, social media, e-commerce, all rolled up into one big, very complex and challenging donut for us to try and bite into.
Yeah.
Sorry for that analogy.
I think just in the interest of time, because we already discussed this a bit, that we'll go to the last question, which is how do you think the sector will evolve in the next 3 years, and how will you stay unique? You all had very similar opinions, and the key fact for each of you to stay unique was quality, and not stinting on who you are and your brand and your level of ingredients on the key the creativity on the production. Stefania, would you like to start? Standard.
Ok. Certo, venendo qui ogni anno ci rendiamo conto che effettivamente è un mercato aperto e il trend è qui sostanzialmente la profumeria, ci sono sempre nuove aziende che ben venga nascono sostanzialmente. È chiaro che è difficile sopravvivere ovviamente, quindi qual è la formula giusta? Sicuramente, come dicevo prima, c'è spazio per chi effettivamente riesce a dare qualcosa di autentico, nuovo, creativo, e soprattutto c'è spazio per chi riesce, diciamo, a farlo con una grande professionalità. Personalmente, appunto, ritengo che soprattutto bisogna, diciamo, rispettare molto anche l'aspetto etico, nel senso che la correttezza nello sviluppo del proprio lavoro, cercare di mantenere questo aspetto che è fondamentale. Per quanto riguarda Nobile, noi pensiamo appunto soprattutto a migliorare, questo sì, cioè migliorare lo standard, cercare di fare meglio di quello che siamo in grado di fare. E questo è quello che ci porta avanti, la passione. Noi siamo appassionati, a noi piace questo lavoro, ci dedichiamo con tutta la nostra energia. Siamo un'azienda a conduzione familiare, quindi è un'azienda sicuramente piccola, però piena di, diciamo, di voglia e di volontà sostanzialmente, nel rispetto diciamo, di quei principi e quei valori in cui crediamo, cioè vogliamo dare qualcosa di, ripeto, autentico e nuovo sul mercato.
Luc, would you like to add your viewpoint?
Yes, just let's keep the political correctness here. In terms of what's going to happen to the sector in the future, I hope, Silvio, you will not be as successful as today in the next couple of years. Sorry for that. No, really. I mean, we can't have a few hundred new brands and a few zillions new fragrances every single year and still call ourselves Artistic Perfumery. So at some point in time, there's going to be a balance coming in. You have lots and lots of money pouring in, not only from the big guy in big bags who buy back brands, but also from people who think, oh, quick money to make. Oh, these guys have lots of margins, it's expanding, let's do some business. Well, that's not the point. And the customer is not a fool anymore. I mean, you could sell the customer anything, just anything, in the new countries coming to niche 10 years ago. It's completely gone today. So I think the market will get more and more structured around some key concept brands. And of course, there's going to be new brands, and that's a good thing, with interesting concept coming in every year. But, you know, by one here, one there, not by the dozen. More money poured into the business, which will create most certainly, you know, it's like a three-tier kind of organization. Brands that will become more and more I don't know how to say it, but masstige brands, let's put it this way, coming out of the Artistic Perfumery, true to their world kind of independent brands, and whatever the concept is behind, whether it's heritage or whether it's a completely different perspective on the fragrance or French, Italian, whatever, and the newcomers that will continue to boost and shake the industry. But we'll see what's coming next. You know, we know that in some region 2015 has not been as good, you know, with the oil as at $25 or $30 a barrel. You don't have the same trend, you know, in the Middle East, so to speak. We see what's coming next, but hopefully it will go back to the roots of the business, which was absolutely creating unique things and providing it to customers that, you know, love true luxury. I'm sorry, Silvio.
Volevo solo aggiungere che in effetti da 15 anni, almeno in Italia, il nostro cliente diciamo, ha avuto l'occasione di sperimentare, eccetera. Il nostro consumatore non è stupido, sta diventando sempre più informato, sempre più consapevole. Quindi noi diciamo, non possiamo proporre delle cose che non hanno senso sostanzialmente, perché sono stesso loro poi a scegliere, a fare la differenza e a selezionare. Quindi attenzione, questo è veramente importante, non basta mettere insieme 4 o 5 cose che magari hanno funzionato per rendere un marchio interessante agli occhi, perché sarà lo stesso nostro consumatore che è in grado di fare anche una selezione. Cioè, su questo non sono degli stupidi, sia il nostro profumiere che acquista, sia il nostro distributore che ci rappresenta, sia il consumatore finale.
Thank you. Just to turn to Amy, to you, I remember one part of our conversation, and Bailey, we had the same conversation about probably in the next 3 years there will be a lot of deaths in the sector. But Amy, the point that you made that I thought was really important was that some of it is going to be due to cash and stock management that the brand is not experienced, and that would cause a quicker death.
Yeah, I mean, I think brands will die for 2 reasons. The consumer will see through them because it's a more sophisticated consumer who's also far more cynical about brands and marketing. So you combine those 2 factors, and they are going to see the brands without substance behind their proposition and reject them after trying them once. And the other will be the classic challenges that you see in any industry with a lot of small business owners. They get very excited, they overinvest, they can't pay their bills. It will be practical things that will probably, unfortunately, drive out some good brands. Because as Luc was saying, the cost to invest and develop truly good fragrances, you don't do that once and get it right. It rarely happens that way. It's time consuming. You need expertise. You have to invest to make your product in a package that helps you stand out. And then your cost to take it to market is greater because of the competition. And because of gray market, you've got to protect yourself. So I think the rising cost to be successful will prove incredibly challenging and to the detriment of probably some very good small players in the industry.
Bailey, anything to add?
I don't think I'm going to add anything to that. I think everybody made very good points.
Okay. Well, that's the end of the questions that I had for the panel today, based on the time. Are there any questions from the audience?
You know, I'm going to have some. Hi, I'm Michelin Camin. I'm the Safdie.com. And, sorry, I project very well. Michelin Camin. I'm with Safdie.com. I have the #1 niche and artistic perfume blog in the world. And I'm going to be very brief because I know every single one of your brands, and I've had the pleasure of working with every one of you. First of all, Bailey,
Going into Pigway, we talk about social media. We talk about the consumer. I can't tell you how many emails I get. I want to buy Knightsbridge. I live in Peoria, but it's only available in London, in Harrods. So one of the questions I have for the panel is, I guess you call it a deal with the devil, because I know, for example, Bergdorf will say, no, no, no. I want this exclusive, and I don't want you to sell this anywhere. So how do you reach a global market? Because in social media, in the blogosphere, there are no country lines. The reader buys these fragrances. They will send people overseas to buy it. So, question for the group. How do you work with the fact that you are thinking local many times, but you have a global audience? There we go.
Since I got knocked over the head with the Knightsbridge question, I'll take that. Yeah, we know the internet is global. We do. But we also have to be very true to our markets. We launch fragrances. We can't do global launches. We're too small a company. We have to be very respectful of our partners that are respectful to us, Harrods being one of them. Knightsbridge is an exceptional situation. Not only is it for them only, but we actually cannot use that trademark anywhere outside of London, so we wouldn't be able to do it. But we're also creating a lot of attention and desire and interest in the brand by doing something so exclusive. So, yeah, we might be creating, maybe a little discord with somebody that wants to buy Knightsbridge, but at the same time, we're also getting people interested in the brand and giving attention to the brand. But the point being, when we launch something at Harrods, I'm probably not going to introduce it to the American bloggers because their readers are not going to be able to buy it.
They do.
Well,
trust me.
yes and no. I mean,
They do.
I started something in 1995. I went from Elle magazine to something called the internet, which at the time people didn't think made any sense. So believe me, I've had my experience with the internet. I really respect bloggers. I think they are a key to what we do in our success today. But we have to be respectful to our partners and understand that from a market standpoint, we introduce fragrances in markets and we have to treat those markets differently. That's my feeling.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. There's no global market for us. We're not in that business. Countries are different, culture is different, and at the same time, whatever we do, again, artistic can't be everything for everyone. There's a choice to be made. There's no way on earth you could experience, and I think the word experience is very important for perfumes. There's no way on earth you can experience being, in Cambodia, in Singapore, just looking at a TV show and looking at a picture on the internet. You need to experience it in one way or another. Now, when it comes to repeat buy, and once the experience is made, that's something else. But we're not global and we don't want to be.
There's a question in the back of the room.
Hello. Hello, good morning. I would like to ask you to elaborate a little bit on the notion of trend, because when you said earlier that Luc didn't launch a new fragrance because the market wasn't ready, since we're talking about the niche and artistry market, how can a market be ready? We're not talking mass market here. And because since you are the people who will initiate a trend, probably.
Just because I mentioned the trend, we as the different company, we know what it means to launch something that's new to a market and new to a trend. We've launched the first solid fragrance ever, the first one which is, again, the first was Menthos. I mean, I can't count, all the first we've made. But the limit is not the trend in itself. I'm not interested in what's going to sell or not. The limit is, do I think personally that it's elegant enough, that it's bearable enough at that point in time so that people will enjoy it. Not zillions of people, again, it's not my target. And we've launched fragrances that are not bestsellers, like in any brand. You know, we always know that on average, 40% of your portfolio makes 80% at least of your sales. And it's true for any brand on the market. But I just want to make sure that it's acceptable by the market at some point in time. I have a few fragrances that I wear myself personally, and I don't think the market is ready for, because people will smell it and like, oh, whether it's not the different company or whether it's like, are you out of your mind? It's not even a fragrance. We'll see what's going to happen in 5 years down the line. So yes, we're very much, you know, we always try to be at the beginning of the trend, and sometimes when we are too early, we do it later on.
How do you, is it a gut feeling?
Purely, entirely, and only. That's the gut feeling you could have.
Thank you.
There's another question in the back.
Hi, good morning. In terms of building your brand, especially fragrance, it's getting information out to the public as well as sampling to the public. What do you guys feel about this new trend in decanting and selling samples on the internet?
Would you like to take that, Luc? He's
Yes,
snickering.
I do feel, like I bumped into the word decanters, didn't even know what it's, you know, I'm French. I didn't know what it meant, and I saw this website like, oh, we can sell you for $5 whatever fragrance you want. And you can have all the Clive Christian, Piguet, the different company, Nobile, any brand, anywhere. Talk about the experience. There's no experience. You know, there's samples sold at a profit because these guys basically get the testers from all over the place, and they get the decanters, and they you know, they think they're bringing good to the market. I don't think they do. I mean, you have other ways to do it. Now, if the idea is to discover, or to have somebody try out a brand, this is another way to do it. Instead of having a supermarket of any fragrance in the world, then you could do like Nose, for instance, or like, and you have other sites that do that. They help you making a decision, and then, of course, because the computer can't do everything, then you can buy and try out a few different kind of samples. But just, you know, dropping decanters at 100% margin, almost.
Oh, anyone else?
I mean, I think the interesting thing about people selling samples is, I think everybody always assumes because it's for sale, there are people buying it. I'd like to question the intelligence of people buying samples online when they could come to our counter, meet one of our people, and if they showed enough interest, we'll give them the sample for free. So I struggle to see how that is a sustainable model. At the same time, it's completely irritating that somebody's doing that, but they did it when I worked in bricks and mortar world as well. We had people that would come to the stores, get samples, and sell them on market stalls. So the internet has probably sped up the pace of those kind of activities, but if there are people who are willing to pay money for mini samples, well, maybe we've just seen an opportunity that demonstrates that people want really small sizes, and there's a market. I don't know. But I just, some of these things, I don't always assume they're working just because somebody put the for sale sign up. I think that's always worth questioning. Okay, so somebody's done that. They've made all the effort. What are they really generating from that before we make the default assumption that must be working, they're selling tons. We don't know that for sure. It's pretty easy to get a basic operation up online and then sit on a bunch of free samples. I don't know.
Do all of you, I'm sorry, because again, I'm going to take it from a very supportive but different point of view, because brick and mortar is obviously your bread and butter, but for millions of people who can't get to one of your stores, they want to discover your fragrances. I know Luc, he has you have a discovery kit. Is this something that all of you should be thinking about? Because people do want to experience the Piguet, the Oud collection, or the Nouvelle collection. The only way they're going to get that is through your, sometimes you like your Lucky Scent or your brick and mortar your first in fragrance. So is that something you are all considering doing? Is putting together a discovery set of some of your best sellers so that people don't have to go to the decanters? Is that something you're contemplating by any chance?
I mean, we create collections of smaller sizes. I wouldn't necessarily say with our brand that makes them commercially accessible.
No, right.
But it makes them logistically accessible. But to be fair, they can do that now. If somebody really wants a product, no matter what corner of the universe they're from, and I grew up in a small corner of the universe, my parents exist off the internet. They buy stuff from all over the world. If you want something badly enough, if you want something in Knightsbridge, you're on the internet, you'll find someone who'll go and buy it for you and ship it to you if you want it that bad. So I think there's always a way for these things if you want them. And yes, a business like Net-a-Porter would tell you sample kits are what they're selling online with fragrance. People want to be able to trial things, but I don't think that's necessarily about the geographic challenge if I'm not near a store. I just think fragrance is a really fun thing to play with, and people want to try things, and sample sizes in discovery kits are a great way to do that.
Because fragrance is very intimate. It's very much a statement of who you are, and not to be able, it's not something you can see, it's not something you can taste, it's something that you have to, it's intangible. So it's just a question out there, because just to go blindly buy samples, maybe there are people who do it, but if they're really intrigued with the legacy brands, in my opinion, and this is just something that I'm bringing up, that is something to think of, because people really do want to experience your brands, and many of them can't. So.
And I'll just add to that. We definitely put together, a process of sampling because we want people to understand our brand, and so it is really important. But I think it's also the nature of our brands, the brands that are here on this panel, to create a need, an interest, a passion by respecting our relationships in certain markets, with a sense of knowing that people might be going on the internet and wanting to try something, but knowing that we can't be everything to everyone, because it's the nature of artistic perfumery to be niche, I think, is what really it gets down to.
Well, we appreciate your passion and your questions. Thank you.
Karen, may I?
I think we're out of time. Yes.
So I want to answer to all the questions about. I have to announce I will retire because there is no future. No, I'm joking. Absolutely. Now, what I want to say, first of all, a very interesting point, the last point is, what is a niche brand, in my opinion? A niche brand is a brand that can double the point of sales, and is not doing it. So when you have a demand, but you just select the point of sale, you want to have someone promoting the brand in a proper manner. So it should happen you have a great demand for bestseller, but the demand is on bestseller, but the identity of the brand is made of everything they made, the creation, the heritage. So I think, and coming back to sampling, before all these points, I think there is a strange attitude with sampling. So very often brands and distributors related the number of samples to the number of bottles you buy. I think it's the more ineffective way to use the sampling, because what you need is to let the people know the slow moving, not the bestseller, and to let them to discover what you already had in it. And sometimes, because correctly Luc told, not every time is the right time for a fragrance. It should happen that a fragrance you created 25 years ago is today up to date. But a lot of people know the bottle on the shelf, has no the sampling. So, for example, it's happened to me, that's happened more than 20 years ago, that I told to my customers, you have a rule, you can get 3 samples for any bottle you buy. It's not the case of Clive Christian, but for other reasons. But, and what's happened? Tell me which kind of sampling you need. Because if you bought a bottle 6 months ago, it's still on the shelf, and you consume all the sampling, how you promote the bottle? Instead, if you have a bestseller, you really need the sampling. Everyone is asking for the bestseller. You don't need the samples. So that is an approach. The other point on sampling is, you know, I'm involved in nose in Paris, for example, in the diagnosis system. And one of the approaches, I think that internet, e-commerce, surely everything will change, but we need to apply the same attention to e-commerce as we had in retail. So what is very important to define and to create some rules, which kind of shop in the niche market, which kind of service, which kind of involvement of the people that buy. So, you know, in those you can have access doing to a diagnosis online on sampling. You pay the samples, and if you buy some of the bottles, then you get back the money you spent for the samples. But that is very important that you give an assistance. So, which kind of fragrance you use in your life? I can suggest you 5 fragrances according to your let me say, olfactive profile. I let you to discover something that is close to your taste, not because I'm imposing you something. Use your nose and find what is your discreet ambassador. And coming back to nose, then to Luc, and then I finish. I think I used to say in my discussion usually that here in Esxence we have 2 numbers. One is 1.5, and the second one is 900. 1.5, in my opinion, is what we are looking for to conquer the 1.5% of beauty business in the world. That is niche. The beauty business in Europe is 73 billion euro. We are looking for 1.5%. And this in any single country. And if we get it, but before, in order to reach it, we need to create a network in retailing. What we have to confess is that up to now, distribution in a niche is still jeopardized. We have not a complete coverage of the world. So we need no more than, that is not the correct number, but I think no more than 5% of the retails in any country in order to get 1.5% of the beauty business. And that means billion of turnover that you can divide it also for 150 brands, and all of them will be quite happy. And they can produce a correct number of pieces, have a proper balance on cost, but creating production of 20,000 pieces per reference, but staying inside 1.5% in any country. That is what is the right way to develop the business, not to compete with the masstige, but to be close to. There is no reason to compete. What is the problem today that masstige is buying brands in the niche and try to use them, but they apply marketing concepts that are not absolutely the niche concept. So we are simply to define the borders and to accept the rules, and any brands have the commitment to do that. And about gray market, I think there is a mission every brand owner has. You must the one deciding the retail price, and use the retail price as a base in order to create your price list for distributor and retailers. So when you are sure as a distributor or retailer that the price all over Europe will be the same, gray market should be a little more complicated. It's very important that obviously the brands are not feeding the gray market. And that's happening in the Ramadan problem in Cannes, as I call. You know, in Cannes happen every time someone places order, there are more than 3 times of what they should sell. And you have to ask yourself why. The other point is market the product. Thank you very much, I love it. Trace the product. And what we need, the other big words here is natural selection. Natural selection of brands, natural selection of operators, natural selection of final clients.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you, everyone, for joining us today. It's been a really rich discussion. I hope you enjoy the show. And if you have any questions for anyone during the show, I think you can find them at their stands. And Amy and I will be wandering around. Okay, thank you so much.